Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITY TV interview. Today I'm joined again by Aaron Bugal. He is the Global Solutions Engineer at Sophos. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me again, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, we spoke nearly a year ago to the day, with another year of COVID lockdowns in between. What have you been up to for the past year?
Much of the same, actually, staring down the barrel of a camera, of course. I've been doing that quite frequently. So I've gotten to know my webcam somewhat intimately and this lovely Rode microphone. But I guess from a business sense, there's been a lot happening within Sophos. I mean, personally, the team that I'm in, the GSE team, we've been required to sort of go out and educate our SEs on a global level by putting on a number of boot camps, which we do every year. But it's always quite good to get the tools and the technology that we've developed and then put it all together and really use it in anger and then take that out to the masses. That's been quite fun. But I've also been speaking to analysts as well, been helping, say, the Gartners and the Forresters of this world sort of like explore our technology. And that's been a very unique experience for me personally, because it's, they're very methodical, but they're also very expectant, which it brings a fair bit of structure to conversations, but they're somewhat clinical. And I get to speak to people like you. I've been doing a lot of media stuff as well, Alex, and I actually really enjoy it. It's not something that I thought I'd ever be doing, but yeah, I find it fun.
Yeah, and just for those who might not be aware, SE stands for System Engineer, right?
Yeah. Systems engineer, sales engineer, depends on I guess the vendor or the organization that you're a part of. But yeah, we're technically inclined people that are there to help the sales process progress. But yeah, very much well hands-on, roll up the sleeves, get busy with the command line or systems or whatever. But that's what I love doing. That's what I cut my teeth on. So technical all the way.
Sure. Now, COVID, as we were just mentioning, has kept us on our toes. We had the Delta lockdowns, and just as we think we're coming out of it, and we're finally out of lockdown, Omicron has popped up, although thankfully it doesn't appear to be serious, appears to be a bit milder. I guess the jury's still out on that. But what are the cybersecurity implications of returning to the office, particularly with people bringing devices back and the hybrid workplace that many now operate in?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because we're starting to see already the impacts of a lot of people, I guess, taking their corporate assets or not having access to their corporate assets, or in some cases not even being able to use their corporate asset during the extent of the lockdown. Some of the smaller and medium-sized businesses in Australia, they somewhat struggled with adapting their organizations to then work outside, along with the inside regular sort of like a networking requirements. So we're already starting to see the return to work, the capacity restrictions, all the other things you got to do, checks and balances before you can even get into the building, which is pretty much all part of the course of what we do at the Sydney office for Sophos. But the devices themselves, we're seeing a lot of these devices come back online that haven't had a whiff of an internet connection for a good solid 20 months, and they're way behind their patches. Their endpoint protection might be outdated. They've got things that haven't been installed or certificates that have expired. So they're a really rife petri dish, I guess, for things to really start to happen and grow and go horribly sideways. So I guess as we start to look at this new normal and bringing devices back in and into the business, I'm sort of mindful of the stress and the strain that some of these administrators have got to go through to actually bring those devices back in, get them cleaned up, and then rejoin the rest of the network, and then give them the option of having that flexibility, because this is, I think, how we're going to operate as we go forward. And yeah, if people haven't, I guess organizations haven't really invested in helping their IT staff or security staff, deal with this added stress, we're just going to see, I think, a little bit more burnout too.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm guessing these devices, I mean, some of the devices people would have been using on the internet this entire time, but there might have been computers at work or other devices they were using that just have been unused. So those are the devices that you're talking about that didn't get much of an internet connection at all.
Yeah, and we found there was a big scramble, and we are just talking about this previously, where we sort of grabbed what we could grab on the way out of the first lockdown way back when to sustain our working from home. And in some cases, staff were given access to a cloud environment and a set of credentials, and they could use their Microsoft Online stuff to do all their business and access their line of business apps. But they didn't necessarily need to use their corporate assets, so they're using their home asset.
Mm.
So a lot of people have been sharing computers with their kids and their better halves, and whoever else might have access to that system and games and whatnot. And you're starting to see a big commingling of data. So yeah, you've got these threats of machines being dormant for so long that are being dragged back into the office. Do they need a physical hardware refresh? And then you've got employees who are used to using their home computer, and now they've got to go back to using a tiny little laptop screen. There's going to be a fair bit of contention. So watch this space, because we're right in the midst of it now.
Yeah, and of course, with all of the shortages, I mean, if people do need a bigger monitor at work, they may have had one, now they're used to using two or three. I guess the Office Works and JB Hi-Fi's and Harvey Normans of the world will be very happy for all those extra sales.
Absolutely, and they, we've just gone through those big sale periods here, which had their own cybersecurity implications as well. And I ordered a new laptop through work because 3 years has passed. I've been able to do a hardware refresh, but the vendor of the laptop says, well, we'll get it to you maybe by the end of January. And I'm like, oh, I was looking forward to setting it up over Christmas and the New Year's, but I've just got to sort of push through with what I've got, which it'll do.
Yeah, for the time being. I mean, and I purchased an iPhone from Telstra, and I'm still waiting for it to arrive. That was a long time ago. So yeah, there definitely are delays out there. So it's just the modern world we now live in. But what other threats that have evolved over the past 12 months since we last spoke that we need to know about? And what has Sophos had a hand in detecting and defeating?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a ride for the last 12 months. I mean, as we're sort of coming in and out of lockdown and in various global events and big issues as well unfolding, it's kept us on our toes, as well as a lot of the organizations that are out there that this stuff is targeted at. But from my perspective, I do and I don't want to say ransomware. I think it's been spoken about, ad nauseum, but it is now a common tool that sort of resides in the cyber criminals kit bag, if you will, and they'll bring it out to really, in most cases, retrospectively use it to tap the organization that they've just popped on the shoulder and say, you've been compromised and we've taken away the integrity, the availability, and the confidentiality of all your data. It's encrypted, but we've also got a copy of it. So ransomware is unfortunately here to stay. Just like you might use a system tool or something, ransomware is a tool that the bad guys are going to use. But things that we've seen develop over the last 12 months or so, I mean, this is stuff that we might touch on in the threat report a little later, but I really sort of am concerned about things like the initial access brokers, the ransomware as a service operators. These are a couple of things that have really developed. And as a course of that, from what we've had a hand in dealing with, we've seen these sort of techniques all been strung together in some pretty high-profile attacks. And the most notable one for me over the last 12 months was back in July the 2nd, roughly 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon, when unfortunately the very popular managed security provider software was compromised, and if I'm going to say it's Kaseya, and their VSA server was unfortunately, subjected to a really nasty supply chain attack, and a lot of organizations who depended on using Kaseya to manage their environment just unlocked and opened up to the attackers the immediate control and deployment of ransomware. So that whole revisitation of REvil getting their hooks into a lot of these systems globally, most organizations were asked for $90,000 to unlock their systems, and this was on the eve of the July 4 weekend, which is a US-based holiday, but it sort of took the long weekend away for everybody over here that was working on it too. So that was stuff that we really got into, tore apart, quickly released, indicators of attack and compromise for, the subscribers of our software, but also for the general public to help them, look for, if they were using this software, ways in which they could then spot if there was any issues or deficiencies in their configuration and, rectify the situation. But yeah, there's been a lot of innovation, unfortunately, from the cyber criminals, and we're just going to continue to see it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a report about this time last year was talking about how ransomware would turn to extortion and exfiltration, and that, of course, as you were talking about, has happened. And there was also the big hack of Channel 9, which affected their ability to get the programming out. I mean, they scrambled and seemed to handle it pretty well, but I mean, that's something that affects everyday Australians, even if they don't have a computer. If one of their TV networks goes down, that's a pretty mind-blowing thing.
Well, that's just it. I mean, waking up and not being able to watch the Today Show, that was pretty harrowing, right? I had to watch Sunrise. So that was quite quite an interesting, few hours for the Nine group. But I mean, they recovered. They got there in the end. But I mean, that event that has triggered so much of a ripple throughout their entire organization from that top down, because they need to say, we can't let this happen again. It was so disruptive. We lost money where we're now, responsible to our people that wanted to advertise, and there was a whole host of other things. And then, the security of their systems, how they got in, auditors, shareholders, et cetera, et cetera. So, but that is unfortunately playing out in a lot of different organizations. Colonial Pipeline over in the States, they got popped with ransomware. We've seen a rather large energy provider up in Queensland just this week also get popped with ransomware, and they had to
JBS Meats.
JBS Meats. Well, I actually love
that's threatening. That's threatening the Aussie barbecue.
Mate, well, that affected me personally, because I love to barbecue, low and slow American style barbecue. So when there was a rumor with my butcher, hey, we might have a shortage with these big prime cuts of beef, I went in a bit of a panic mode and started, panic buying a couple of briskets and short ribs. But that's the reality of it all. People were kind of scared that they might not have been able to get toilet paper at the start of the pandemic, and then there was people stocking up on meat because they thought there was going to be a massive supply shortage.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it was a couple of weeks they were disrupted for, but they're still paying for it. They're still going through their environment to make sure that everything is 100% so they can defend against this stuff if it ever happens again.
Yeah. Now, I hear a lot of talk about things going passwordless. How close are we to that becoming a reality?
Oh, gee. Where do I start with passwords? So I think from my perspective, I've found that passwordless-based authentication system and access, I think it's a fantastic idea. But we really need to get to a point first as a culture, I guess. You and me, we've got some idea of cybersecurity and what it means to have passwords, but more importantly, what it means to have unique passwords per service. And a bit of a cheeky question back to you, Alex. I mean, do you use Password Manager?
Absolutely, yeah. I use the OnePassword password manager, and then I also use the little YubiKey device from Yubico, which plugs into USB-C and to Lightning. And I have the NFC version, which I should be using, but I'm still using the old one. And I have the Google Authenticator app, and I have my Twitter and Dropbox and a whole stack of things on there. So no, I've gone full on, and with as much security as I can. And I use passwords that are long, like really long, and also I use iCloud Keychain and OnePassword to generate for me different passwords that are very, very long, because they're much harder to break. So no, I definitely practice what I preach, and I recommend it to everybody as well as absolute must.
And I can't agree with you more. Same thing. I use OnePassword here myself because it is easy for it to generate passwords. I need to remember one big long hard password, or just put in a physical key to unlock everything, and that's it done. And if one service gets popped, the other ones are compartmentalized, which is great. But when I start talking to, say, my family and friends and maybe colleagues in other industries, and I say, you thought about going password? They go passwordless. They go, what's wrong with passwords? So I think we've really got to get more towards that critical mass of getting the people that are responsible for generating and using the passwords, where a lot of this problem exists, looking into why password complexity is needed. Maybe the organizations that are enforcing things like, constant changes of password, maybe they need to be backed off a little to, ease up on the users. But most importantly, educating them on why OnePassword for their corporate email account, their Gmail account, their social media accounts, their private email is not such of a good thing. And then at that point in time, I think once we get that education across, we can start having the password-less based conversation more in depth. I mean, just as a bit of a spruik of Mr. Troy Hunt's service up in Queensland, which is ominously available through omnipresently, I should say, through the cloud, haveibeenpwned.com. I implore everybody just to jump on his website and type in an email address that you might have associated with an online service and see, has it been implicated in a previous breach? And if you use the same password across other services, you can bet your bottom dollar that the cyber criminals are going to attempt to use those credentials in those services and conduct some form of identity fraud. It's literally that simple. So when we talk about people being compromised and JBS Meats falling victim to ransomware, those initial access in more cases often than not are as a result of reuse credentials being valid on that corporate gateway that were popped from LinkedIn or Adobe or
Netflix.
some other sort of big data breach. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, passwordless. I can't wait. YubiKey. I haven't got one myself, but I think it's probably time I got one. Password managers, absolutely, but have the conversation with your family and your friends. I mean, Christmas is a great time to do it. We're all buying stuff online, and we have been doing it for the last couple of years. So if you're not using a password manager, look into investing in one now.
Yeah, and I mean, I've subscribed to the Have I Been Pwned.com, and I always think of it's Pwned because it's the same spelling as OWNED, but instead of an O, it's a P. So Have I Been PWNED.com, and you can sign up. And then if your, which is a free service, and then if your email address is exposed in a breach, it tells you. And I've seen that 2 or 3 times this year, one just very recently, and I go and check to see what service it was, and I can see that, yep, it's some service that I have a unique password for, and I'm not worried about it because it's something different. And I know people who I've been hassling for years, and they finally started doing it. Use a different password because you never know when someone else's system is going to be breached. So
the Christmas Day, when you've got your family and all your friends around, and you're sort of tailing off at the end of the day, I always get the TV up, turn the TV on, and open up the browser, and I go, right, somebody give me their email address, and I get one of my friends or family's email addresses, and I put it into the website, and this big red thing comes up that says been popped here, and here, and they go, what's that? And so I'm going to tell you a story, everybody, about passwords, and then they go. And some of them cry, some of them get upset, some of them get really antsy, but I'm just like, well, this is why we need to change our password. So I'm doing it a group at a time, but I just think if we can all, as the cybersecurity people that are in the IT industry, start talking more about, changing passwords and having better policies, and we'll be able to get somewhere on this topic.
Yeah. Look, I'm also Director of Public Relations and Sponsorship for the Australian Seniors Computer Clubs Association. Just before this video interview, I was doing the monthly Zoom main meeting, and we invite people to come along. So, it's aimed at anybody. You don't have to be a senior to come along. As I like to say, we are all future seniors. But, as long as we don't fall victim to the 27 club. But in any case, most of us are going to reach the senior ages. And it would be great to have you come along talking to that audience, just to tell that story. And we can, use my email address, for example, or, another email address, type it in, see what comes up. And, only has to be on, you don't have to be on for 10 or 15 minutes to tell us this, but you'd be very welcome because this is the sort of thing people need to hear.
I'd love to, mate. I mean, that would be more than happy to do anything like that, as it's for the greater cause. So I'm more than happy to spend the time there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, Aska's a not-for-profit charity. So sadly, I'm not getting paid, and none of the other directors are, but it's been going for 23 years, and it's the peak body for seniors and technology. So the next meeting is going to be in January, and I'll see if we can get you to that one. Otherwise, there's also February. And for anyone that wants to watch these Zoom main meetings, you just go to ascca.org.au, ascca.org.au. We just had our 23rd annual technology conference, opened by special guest Kamal, which was really cool. And he turned 87 the Saturday after the event, so he's definitely a senior. And then the Zoom main meetings are there too. So definitely check those out. But look, what other things that Sophos is working on now? Are there any sneak peeks you can give us on new capabilities?
We're really getting into the cyber threat intelligence, and this is something that I'm really partial to, because as an organization that provides protection to a lot of our customers using endpoint protection software and firewalls and email gateways and all that sort of stuff, a lot of that is closed source intelligence that we give to our products to defend. But we've actually opened up the door a little bit. We want to become a lot more bi-directional. And I think power and numbers, that force multiplier, if we're acting together against the cyber criminals, we're going to have a much better outcome when it comes to successfully defending against attacks that we can predict and prevent. So from our perspective, we've released what we call Sophos Labs Intellex. It's a service that's available through the Amazon marketplace. You don't need to be a Sophos customer to sign up to. There is a free tier that you can then utilize, which allows you to effectively enrich your own, telemetry from various systems. So many medium to large organizations are using things like a security information event management system, like a SIM, like a Splunk or a Greylog or whatnot. And if you're aggregating logs to a central point, and if it's collecting things like IP addresses and domain names, and even if it's witnessing things like hashes from applications that are coming in at various points, then we can take that information and say, aha, we know that that's dodgy or that's really suspicious, that's actually malware, and then bring that information and bubble it up to you. So being that, I guess, we're trying to give back to the community and just enriching a lot of the defenders that are out there, giving them something to go into battle with, but not necessarily charge them for from day dot.
Yeah. Now, ransomware and exfiltration and extortion and running out of meat and those sorts of things are things that are obviously keeping you up at night as such. But what else is keeping you up at night as cyber criminals get ever sneakier and smarter?
Yeah. This is so that the stuff in our Sophos Labs threat report that we released only just recently for 2022 gives a bit of a retrospective insight to what we saw over this year, but also predictions of what's going to happen next year. So the things that I'm really concerned about are the fact that a lot of these cyber criminal groups, like the ones with the fancy names, according to some vendors, and those that maybe they're nation state or whatnot, but who cares and who really cares where they're from and what their intentions are. But I mean, yeah, they're cyber criminals, right? The thing is that they're starting to lean into their specialization. So if they've got a capability of being like a really good ransomware builder, and their ransomware is really good and fast at encrypting files, then they're starting to sort of drift towards, well, rather than doing everything, those people then concentrate on developing the best ransomware. And then you've got those at the other end of the spectrum that are really good at, say, gaining initial access into an environment. We're calling these initial access brokers or network access brokers. And they're sort of like maintaining like a very small foothold into a business, which is largely remaining undetected by the victim. And then they're selling that access off to the highest bidder, whether it's a ransomware provider or somebody who wants to come along and say, I want to be a cyber criminal. I'm going to go and buy this initial access from that broker over there, and I'm going to team it up with some ransomware as a service from this new, modified REvil group that we're seeing come back into fashion, and they're going to run with it. So it's going to create this underground marketplace of specialists that you can go and pick and choose from. And these attacks are going to be largely successful because there's already access and there's really good ransomware. So as defenders here, we're really sort of going in hard on making sure that things like behavioral-based detection against ransomware, that's stuff that we can stop with our own CryptoGuard tech, but at the same time giving that information, that intelligence back to the field, to our users, to spot this stuff before it happens. This is going to be the way forward. But yeah, we're concerned about them, but at the same time we know they're there.
Yeah. Now, you did mention the 2022 threat report, and I am going to speak to Sophos Australia and New Zealand MD John Donovan about that next week in more detail. But is there any other information that we really should know about, either that you haven't already told me or from that report, which, again, we'll hear from John in more detail about?
Yeah, I don't want to steal his thunder, as you said. So I just want to make sure that there's a couple of things in there from a combination standpoint that I, from a prediction standpoint, I'm really concerned about. And one of those things is mobile malware. So we've seen some pretty horrific threat actors, deploying and providing some really hideous pieces of spyware that can lodge itself on a variety of different phones. And we've seen a pretty big uptick of people that are using these really bad pieces of spyware to then act as, say, banking stealer Trojans. So stealing, transactional information or the ability to access people's bank accounts. But this is starting to really sort of like diverge into then going after cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of manufacturers of wallets and exchanges out there that are there. Some are good and some are bad. Some are existing, some are crashing. And crypto has been a bit of a hot topic this week, right? But yeah, we're finding a lot of people that are interested in getting into the crypto market will simply go out there and use these tools to then focus on, capturing or luring potential victims into installing these applications under the false pretenses that it's an innocent app, and then stealing access to their cryptocurrency. And we've seen millions and millions of dollars being fleeced from people using traditional methods, but also going after their crypto wallets and their private keys and just siphoning the money away. And with how crypto functions at its core, it's very hard to get that cryptocurrency back. So yeah, watch this space. If you're a crypto investor, choosing the right exchange, where you hold your coins and how you keep that information secure, turn on all the security features and watch it like a hawk, because you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and look, there was just in news.com.au today, as we're recording this video interview, there was a story about, I think, a Melbourne company called My Crypto Wallet that people can't withdraw their crypto from, and they've just gone into liquidation. And I don't know if they were hacked or if it was stolen. I don't know what the story is. But yeah, I mean, imagine going to the bank and not being able to get your money out. And that, of course, happened in Cyprus back in 2014 or something during the Greek sort of meltdown of the euro. I mean, they seem to have come back. But I mean, this sort of thing has happened before. It's happened before in history. And it's scary stuff for people who, don't put all your eggs in the one crypto basket. That's for sure.
Yeah. Have a diverse portfolio of coins, I guess, if you're that way inclined. But yeah, you're right. That unfortunately, that Melbourne entrepreneur has caught in the liquidators to wind down the company, and people can't withdraw their money. And you've got people with hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars in there that they just can't get back, and that's now going to be paid back maybe as cents on the dollar, depending on the way the liquidators and the government see it. But there was a story yesterday where a couple had lost, I think, a home deposit, $120,000.
$110,000. It was Druid ICAV that the hackers
Druid ICAV.
Yeah, which the hackers were apparently copying completely.
Yep.
I mean, I've never heard of that company, but apparently it's a real company. And the bad guys had cloned that site entirely, and the information they were passing through was real information. So when the shares and stocks and crypto went up, it was real. But when they tried to withdraw, after maybe withdrawing some money or seeing the value go up, they were then enticed to put more money in. And of course, once you put 50 or 100 grand in, they disappear.
Yep, and this is, I mean, if you've ever watched that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, or the pump and dump scams from the late 90s, early 2000s from over email spam, it's the same sort of thing. You had somebody who made a phishing call, a threat actor made a phishing call.
It was an unsolicited call that these people had received. Unsolicited. Why would you trust anyone just ringing you out of the blue? But
if it smells too good to be true, it probably isn't. So. This is the thing, is like phishing and luring people in by, tugging at their heartstrings and, you want to buy a house and we're going to triple your money in 3 days based on crypto, jump on board. The spidey senses should be going off, and you should be really, 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 wary of any of these sorts of scams. I feel sorry for that couple. I hope they can get their cash back, but that's going to set them back a fair bit.
Yeah. Now, look, a couple more questions to go. I asked you this question last time, so I'm altering it slightly. What is the best piece of advice that you've received over the last 12 months?
So this is a hard one, really, because a lot of people give me advice, whether it's solicited or not. But the thing that I found out the last couple of years is that, time is finite, and asking for help is okay. And that's come from very many different places when it comes, personal, mental health, just based on the fact that we've all been isolated for so long and in and out of lockdowns, right? But from a, relevance, Your Honour, from a cybersecurity standpoint, from an IT industry, it really resonates with us. We're being asked as managers of an IT environment, as a tech analyst, a SOC analyst, as a cybersecurity person, we're being asked to do more with not much more in the kit bag. So from my perspective is that if there's something that needs to be done, it's okay to go out and seek help. Doing it on your own or trying to do it with everything that you've got, you might have the ability of going out and getting some really good information from a peer, a colleague, maybe even a competitor, a forum or whatnot, but asking for help is probably a piece of advice that was given to me that I really took to, and it's just made things so much easier professionally and also personally too.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at your name because I'm about to thank you, but I can and ask you for your final message. But I can see that you're a global solutions engineer. So SE also must stand for solutions, not just sales and systems.
That's right. It's interchangeable. Depends on who we're speaking to, right?
Yeah. So look, what is your final message to IT Wire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Oh, gee. So this one I put a fair bit of thought on. I've had conversations at length about this, but just to keep it brief in a couple of minutes, is people, process, and technology. They're all interdependent and interrelated and mutually, whatever you want to call it, on each other. And when I'm speaking to, whether it's a partner or a customer or whatever in a professional sense, it's like you might have the right technology that you've acquired over the last N number of months, but do you have the right processes and people to drive it? And we see this. We know it's an issue, but we've got a big cybersecurity skills shortage here in Australia, and the government's kicking in money to fix that. But take a pause for effect to say, well, hang on, if we've got people that are coming and going quite quickly, are we letting those people down by not giving them sort of like the right processes to follow? Are we not deputizing them enough so that they can make decisions when things go wrong and they need to fix? Or is the technology stack that we've chosen on their behalf not fit for what they need to do in their capacity of the role? So I just really see that, if you're looking at your organization and you're trying to sort of like sustain what you're going to be doing moving forward in this new normal, there you go, there's another boardroom bingo word, but just really take stock of, you've probably got really good people. Everybody does, and we want to hang on to them. But take a moment to look at the processes you've got and really understand the technology that you've got in your environment. And then as somebody who's responsible for cybersecurity, if there is a deficiency in those, don't be quiet. Strike up a conversation and use it as a leverage point for change. Really go to the board, go to management and say, listen, we need to change these things because of X, Y, and Z, and be honest. And you'll find that these conversations can be so cathartic and really help you get what you need to do your jobs right, but also it's going to benefit the business and everything is going to balance out, and happy days.
Well, Aaron Bugal, Global Solutions Engineer at Sophos, thank you so much for taking the time today, and I do look forward to talking again in the future.
I can't wait, Alex. It's been fun again, and look forward to it, bud.
Great. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.